Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good evening to everyone.
Waalaikumsalam,
Evening,
Prof.
Prof.
Salam, Prof.
Hi, how's everyone?
Good.
Great.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah. Sehat, Alhamdulillah.
Okay, that's good to hear. So we are here for tonight for week 4 of our class already. Week 4, going very fast. So tonight we have, we'll be looking at the topic of, we'll be introducing the concept of youth development tonight, after last week's class on looking at the history of youth and how the youth and adolescent concepts came into being and their influences and so forth. So now we're gonna sort of jump ahead to a more contemporary, modern way of thinking and working with young people, which is called youth development, or you may also heard it as referred to as positive youth development. Okay, so I hope our esteemed presenters are all ready to go.
Yes, Prof.
Good. All right, so before we do that, we got a few things we're going to discuss first. Okay, so just to let me just share my screen here. I want to jump to the Puja Blast. Hold on a second. All right. So, okay, so tonight, week 4, goals and purpose of youth development. Not much from housekeeping tonight. I think everything is pretty much in order. I've uploaded the slides from last week. Those very nice, very attractive slides that our group presented last week are now uploaded onto Puja Blast for your viewing pleasure, as well as the video from the class. Okay, so anybody that missed the class last week or you want to look at it again, you can do that. Actually, there's going to be a bit, in terms of the agenda tonight, I'm going to actually do things a little bit differently than what's written in the Puja Blast. So I'm actually going to start class tonight by showing you a very short video. And that's in order to sort of provide a little bit of starting context for our article presentation, all right? And then if time allows, like usual, we never know really how long the discussion on the reading is going to go. But if time allows, if there's a significant amount of time left after the presentation, we're going to do a short exercise relating to the reading for the evening, all right? The other thing is I wanted to just inform you, as I did in the WhatsApp group, this coming, where is that? Sorry, hold on one second. Yeah. This coming Friday, there's going to be a program, and I do apologize for the fact that it's on a Friday night, Friday evening. So, you know, I'm just informing you. It's not required for you to go to attend, of course, but as part of the class. But if you are available and you're interested, you may just want to tune in. We're doing an online, it's not really a webinar, it's just sort of a program with our colleagues from Sri Lanka. So we have colleagues at the Open University of Sri Lanka. And we're going to be doing this sort of webinar called Reshaping the Role of Youth Workers During COVID-19 in sort of celebration of the Commonwealth's Youth Work Week, which was actually last week, but we're having the program this Friday. So Professor Ismi and I, Prof. Ismi, for those of you who know Prof. Ismi, and I will be presenting. And actually, we're going to be presenting study findings that we did. We did a study actually earlier in the year, right? It was right around the first MCO, around April, no, it actually started from May to July. We did a study on youth work in the Commonwealth, among the Commonwealth countries. It was only about an 8-week study, very fast study. where we worked with young researchers from Commonwealth countries to investigate what was happening in the world of youth work during COVID-19 from the perspective of different countries. So we interviewed youth workers from Malaysia, India, Uganda, Kenya, Malawi. We had about 6 countries. I can't remember the other ones. And just to sort of learn how they were adapting to COVID-19, how their youth work practice was affected by COVID-19 and so forth. And so we produced a pretty big report based on that study. And so we're going to present the findings from that study at this webinar. I will be presenting that. Prof. Ismi will be presenting on another study that we did with university students during COVID-19. And then our colleagues in Sri Lanka will also share some stuff that they're doing. And there'll be a lot of students tuning in from their side and hopefully from our side as well. So, and there'll be some time for dialogue and discussion. Okay, so just want to inform you if you're interested to tune in. If you don't have anything more exciting to do on Friday evening, feel free, please join us, okay? I apologize about the time. We wanted to do it earlier, but there's a 2.5-hour time difference, and apparently the Sri Lankan students have a lot of classes on Fridays all the way into the afternoon. So they couldn't do it earlier in the day. So we were kind of stuck with that strange time of 8 o'clock in the evening. So I apologize for that. But if you are around and interested, it might be something worthwhile for you to tune into. All right. So let's go back to our checklist. Okay, so that's about it in terms of housekeeping. Are there any concerns? Anyone have any questions? Anything anyone would like to share in the class? Anything youth related come to mind? Current events? Anything at all? Mutiara, you're about to say something, but you're muted. I saw your mouth.
No.
Oh, you looked like
I
you wanted to
said,
say something.
I'm thinking like what to share because I
Oh.
have none.
That's okay. I'm just asking if there's anything out there. Are any of you Masters of Science students or PhD students? Anybody in the class doing research or research-based graduate program? No. You're all MHRD or MED students? Yeah. Huda, you're doing, what are you doing? Which program are you doing?
MHRD, Prof.
Oh yeah, okay. So that's like most of you. Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's any research-based program students here.
Oh.
Usually I like students to talk about their research. Usually they need assistance. and it's good to discuss research issues in class because actually often the students have good ideas, suggestions, other students on how to help those who need assistance. So I like to have my classes discuss research, but it's okay. Never mind. So none of you are starting project papers or dissertations or whatever? Master's dissertation? No, still too early.
Yeah.
Oh, you are?
Currently,
what stage are you in your study?
I am now, Prof. I am now in the really initial stage, looking for the topics.
Okay.
But after reading so much on youth, that I prone to the youth. After reading so much in innovation and in civil services, then I prone to. That's why I cannot make up my mind.
I see. Yeah, don't worry. It's a common problem. Yeah. A lot of students have that problem. It's a common problem. Choosing, yeah, you'd be surprised how difficult choosing a topic can be for a study, and it's a very important issue to resolve because if you choose a difficult topic or you choose the wrong topic, it can make life very difficult for you. So it's a very important decision. But yeah, I mean, it's always good to follow something that is of interest to you. Okay, so research is always more enjoyable when you're looking into something that's of interest. So, and now with COVID-19, we have so many different issues that need to be researched. We need research in so many different areas now. So in some ways, I think it's good actually for you guys that are doing research now, in the sense that you know, the pandemic is creating just so many areas for opening up new areas for research opportunity. You know, so definitely around youth, there's tons of things we can be studying. So Kong asked, "Is that internet have SF wrong?" Sorry, Kong, I don't understand your question. Can you repeat it? Can you? Is the internet have? Oh, there's something wrong with the internet. You're having a problem with the internet. Apparently, all good here. With the arrows, okay. Yeah, I think it seems okay. Maybe it's from your end. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to share this video with you. It's a short video. It's only about 4 minutes. Okay, but what I want you to look, what I want you to pay attention to is thinking about what this is actually a video about Iceland, the country Iceland, and the reforms that they implemented around youth development, and how it had a dramatic effect on teenage behavior in the country. Okay, especially at-risk behavior like substance abuse, particularly. So, you know, drinking and drug abuse and stuff like that. And so pay particular attention to what they did and why you think what they did was effective, all right? Because that's going to really sort of drive our discussion tonight, okay? So let me go ahead and share my screen.
It was a huge problem 20 years ago, a huge problem. In 20 years, Reykjavik went from being worse in Europe when it came to youth drinking, smoking and use of drugs, to being the best. And that's kind of incredible, isn't it?
We are getting ready for a walk around the neighborhood to see if we have some kids wandering about that should be home already because it's after 10 o'clock. They are under age to be out after 10, and we told them if you find kids, usually it's like that. They will just go home. But these were not drinking, they were just out. That's different from the old days.
We try to be at home around 4, 5 the latest, and we try to be together until they go to bed at around 8. We are more, I think, today protective of childhood than we were.
And I think also in the old days there was more liberty and people were not as aware of the risks and dangers as people tend to be today.
But we are a boring country.
We train about 5 or 6 times a week, just after school, usually around 5:30.
We like to go swimming. We try to do that every day.
I often go with my brother to play volleyball.
The girls also play football, and also horse riding is very popular.
We measure different aspects of their lives, you know, their relations to peers and family, substance use, and how they feel. We create a report for each community, and within 2 months of the survey, each school has the findings so that they can figure what do we need to do in order to create the best circumstances for the kids in our community.
First, you have to decide to build what you do on evidence and research. Secondly, you have to fund it and get people out there talking to the parents, talking to the schools, talking to the youth clubs, and everyone that has to be involved.
Let's keep in mind, kids, they don't want to use drugs. They want to be able to lead happy, healthy lives.
We probably beat England in the European finals because of this program.
Okay, did y'all catch that? So the reason why the mayor at the end was laughing so hard is because that was a BBC program. So he was sort of rubbing it in their noses that they beat England in the football. So at first I was wondering, why was he laughing so hard? And then I realized, yeah, it's a BBC program. So, okay. So anyway, it's a very interesting story, what Iceland was able to do in 20 years. And we think, oh, 20 years, it sounds so long, but actually to achieve those kinds of dramatic changes in society, it's actually very fast. 20 years is very fast. Okay. So let's keep what you saw in mind. And now let's go to our reading presentation, because what we're going to see in the reading presentation, I think, is going to explain a lot of why the Iceland program was so effective. Okay. As you can see, it's being replicated in 35 countries. This was 2017, I believe. So that was 3 years ago. So maybe now it's even in more, but at that time it was 35 countries that are trying to replicate that model. So it's quite interesting. Okay, so are our presenters all ready to go? I believe
Yes,
you are free to share, if you'd like to share your...
Okay, I will share my screen.
Great.
All right, can we start now?
Please.
Oh, okay. Okay, Assalamualaikum and a very good evening to Prof. Latif and fellow friends. So we are from Group 3 to present this week an article entitled Principle for Youth Development. An article written by Stephen F. Hamilton, Mary Agnes Hamilton, and also Karen Pittman. Okay, next. Okay, before we proceed with the presentation, let me introduce our team members. We consist of 3 people. Okay, start with Puan Nurul Huda. Kak Huda, can you please wave your hand to the camera? Okay, and then Puan Nurzilawati and also me, Haizum. Okay, next. All right, so this is a table of content or the outlines of our presentation for today. The presentation consists of 4 main parts. Okay, the first one will be the introduction, whereby the term usage of today's topic, which is youth development, will be discussed further. And then the second one will be we shall proceed with the process and goals of youth development. Third one, principles for promoting youth development, and lastly, the practices for promoting youth development. Okay, so we move on to the first topic, which is the usage of youth development term. All right, next. Okay, as you all can see on the slide, the usage of youth development term can be categorized into 4 P's. Based on the articles, the term youth development is used in 2 different ways. Okay, it has been referred as a natural process of the development. Okay, that will be the first P. And also it has been used in development of principle, referring to the second P, and apply it as a practices, the third P. All these 3 P's are important and they are logically related. Okay, apart from these 3 P's, another P, which is the 4 P's, is the policy. Okay, this is referring to actions adopted by an organizations, especially the government. These 4 terms of usage will be explained further in the next slide. So, process, principle, practices, and the policies. All right, next. Okay, So why is youth development being referred as a natural process? Okay, by definitions, natural process in youth development means the growing capacity of a young person to understand and act on the environment. Okay, in this usage, the process is identical or it is similar to child or adolescent's development. Based on the author of the article, human development is the natural unfolding of the potentials inherent in the human organism in relation to the challenges and supports of the physical and social environment. This means as long as life, development lasts. Okay, thus, optimal development in youth enables individuals to lead a healthy, satisfying, and productive life as youth and later as adults because they gain the competence to earn a living, to engage in civic activities, to nurture others, and to participate in social relations and cultural activities. Okay, basically we understand that youth definitions will include childhood and adolescence, right? Okay, but the field of youth development highlighted in these articles emphasizes adolescence, roughly the second decade of life, meaning say first decade will be 10 years, so second decade of life is in between 10 to 20 years old. This coincides with the definitions of age range categories according to WHO, World Health Organizations, where adolescence is in between 10 to 19 years old, youth is 15 to 24 years old, while young people is in the range of 10 to 24 years old. Okay, during this age range, which is 10 to 19 years old, both heredity and environment influence the natural unfolding. From my understanding, people can actively shape their own development through the choices they make and interpretations they place on their experiences. It's something like we develop the habit to make better decisions in life, or the choices or the decisions that we make determine the life that we will eventually lead. Okay,
so, oh, sorry. So the definition there, as you can see, that's the WHO's definition. And of course, this is culturally determined in a lot of ways, in the sense that it's socially constructed, as we talked about in our previous class. There's nothing, again, that age range is something that is different, again, depending on which country you go to. So their definition, as you can see, is a bit old, is a bit younger than the Malaysian definition, for example, 10 to 24, right? So when they say they emphasize on the second decade of life, yeah, youth development in Western countries focuses more on adolescents, especially teenagers, than it does here, where the age of youth tends to be extended somewhat. And again, so that's just something we need to keep in mind, all right? One of the interesting things about youth development is that youth development is very, when you study youth development, it's very much grounded in the idea, that last bullet there, both heredity, and environment influence how a young person develops, how a young person sort of flourishes and in their environment. So there used to be this argument, this debate between what was called nurture and nature. So is our development mostly determined by our heredity or our sort of God-given personalities, or is it the environment we grow up in? Anybody that studies youth development, you'll see that there is a nice, healthy balance between these two things. In other words, it acknowledges the influence of both, right? And the fact that what we sort of bring to the table, that inherited sort of personality and then those traits that we've been given, is also shaped by the environment, right? That's why youth development works mostly on principles rather than specific prescriptions to say that, oh, if you want to address this problem, you have to have this experience. It works mostly on these sort of guiding principles, which we're going to learn about more tonight. Okay, so I'll stop there and let Haizum continue.
All right, okay, next.
So principles.
Okay, the principles. Okay, so the second term usage will be the principles. Okay, based on their articles, in the 1990s, the term youth development came to be applied to a set of principles a philosophy or approach emphasizing active support for the growing capacity of young people by individuals, organizations, and institutions, especially at a community level. Okay, the youth development approach is rooted in a commitment to enabling all young people to thrive or to grow or to prosper. Okay, this simple prosper. Okay, this simple statement combines two principles: universality or inclusiveness, okay, meaning all the youth, and a positive orientations building on strength or the thriving. Okay, youth development arose as a counterbalance to the emphasis in problem preventions and treatment programs on categorizing youth according to their deficits and trying to remedy them. Meaning, say, the approaches to prevent versus approaches to treat specific problems is somewhat analogous to that between public health and medical treatment. Okay, as in the article said, as in the health field, sharp debates and rivalries are often dull in practice, where in reality a blend of both approaches is needed. Okay, in my understanding, if youth are to thrive, they need not only prevention but as well as the treatment. Okay, another principle is youth development occurs in the context of healthy relationships and challenging activities that endures and change over time, and that youth are fully engaged participants, not just recipients. This is what we call youth engagement. Youth engagement is the result when young people are involved in responsible, challenging actions to themselves and others. Okay, youth engagement happens in youth-adult partnership that are structured so that both groups contribute, teach, and learn from each other. So, as a video just now said, include everyone in the, in the activities or in the decisions, so that can affect both parties. All right, next.
Okay, sorry, just a few things. What do you when you guys see that, when you read that, or maybe from your reading of the article, what do you understand by the bullet about universality or inclusiveness and a positive orientation building on strengths? Anyone in the class? Anyone other than the presenters?
Okay, I just want to test this.
Anybody? Presenters, you'll get your shot after this to answer the question.
All right.
Anybody? So, as opposed to coming up and creating youth programs that just treat specific problems, positive youth development or youth development focuses on universality or inclusiveness and a positive orientation on building on strengths. Anyone have any idea what that means? So it gives the analogy of the public health versus the medical model in the treatment of disease. So for example, let's take COVID-19. Every afternoon at 5:30, Dr. Noor Hisham gets on the air and he talks about the public health response to treating COVID-19. What does he say? As a public health expert, what is he always emphasizing?
SOP.
Why? Right, SOP. What are SOPs essentially?
Stay at home.
No, those are the SOPs. But what are SOPs? In essence, what are SOPs trying to do?
It is about to remind and then to give.
It's about treatment? You treat COVID-19 with SOPs? Really? Seriously?
To prevent
So if you get COVID-19, you're supposed to put on a mask and that's going to cure you of COVID-19?
To prevent.
Prevent.
3C and 3W.
Sorry, Hadi, can you say it again?
3C and 3W.
Yeah, those are the SOPs, yes. And their purpose, the reason that he's always emphasizing those SOPs is, as someone just mentioned, I don't know who it was, but they said prevention. SOPs are to prevent us from getting COVID-19, right? So it's being proactive in protecting us from getting it, as opposed to the people that just say, just wait for the vaccine. Just treat it. Just wait for the vaccine. Don't worry about the SOPs. Okay, so you have, like in my country, in the US, Donald Trump, the president, is always saying, we're just going to wait for the vaccine. We're not going to worry about wearing masks and all that stuff. So these are two different mentalities. Biden won. These are two different schools of thought. One is a prevention approach. One is a treatment approach. Public health versus a medical model. So youth development is more along the lines of a prevention approach. So it says that universality and focusing on youth strengths is what is important to help youth to thrive and then to avoid any kind of problem behaviors. If young people are thriving, they won't be involved in any problematic behaviors. But if you just wait for young people to get into trouble and then you just treat the problem, it's actually not very effective, because what research has shown is that by doing that, all you do is you re-emphasize the problem behaviors psychologically within them. So for example, if you take a group of young people and you put them in a program to treat a certain problem, they are going to be associated with that problem. In other words, they will become stigmatized both internally and externally, that they are problematic, right? And so they end up just repeating the problem over time. And that's recidivism. You see this in recidivism research with people who go to prison. They often, I think globally, 80% of people that are convicted of crimes and go to prison, they actually end up repeating the crime. Okay, it's this idea that it has a counter effect to what they're trying to do. So if you create a situation, you create an environment where young people are building on their strengths, then there's no reason or no need for them to fall into these kinds of behaviors. All right. And so if you look at when you think back to the video just now, you can see that this is sort of what Iceland is trying to do. They're trying to create a strong foundation of youth development so the young people don't even think about drinking. They don't even want to drink because they're occupied in positive activities that are building their skills, things that they're interested in, and they have strong support from their parents, strong support from families, strong support from the government. That's providing them with opportunities in healthy ways. Okay. So these are some of the core principles, the underlying principles of youth development, and they're general enough that they can be tailored to any environment, any country, any situation. Okay. Anyone want to add anything? Okay, Aizom, take it away.
All right. Okay, next. Okay, so the third use of the term youth development is to describe a range of practices in programs, organizations, and initiatives. Youth development in this sense refer to the applications of the principle, okay, we refer to term number 2 just now, to a planned set of practices or activities that foster the developmental process, the term number 1 in just now in young people. Okay, the distinction between principles and practices is especially useful when considering the various setting or contexts in which young people spend time. Okay, development takes place in families, neighborhood, youth organization, faith-based organizations, schools, and a multitude of other places, including cyberspace. Okay, although the specific practices that adults use to create and sustain such opportunities differ across settings, the principles are consistent. Based on the author's terminology, programs, organizations, and initiatives are sequentially larger aggregations of practices. A program may be short-term or long-term. It may involve large or small numbers of youth. It is usually embedded in or sponsored by an organization. An organization is more enduring and has multiple components. Organizations typically engage youth in a range of different programs. For example, a youth might enroll in their arts, employment, and or physical development programs. By initiative, a multifaceted collaborative effort to enlist the broadest possible set of people and organizations in making communities more conducive to young development. Okay, next.
Go ahead.
Right. Okay, the next is the fourth P, which is the policy. Okay, according to Pittman, Irby, and Ferber, 2000, youth development has also gained prominence or importance as a movement. So what it means by that? Okay, youth development serving as a unifying theme for a wide range of discussions and actions aimed at shaping policy as well as practice. Youth development principles have informed policy at all levels of government, local, state, and national, and in a variety of different sectors or departments that includes a focus of young people.
So when later in the semester, when we look at the Malaysian youth policy, you'll see a lot of these principles of positive or youth development in there. Okay, so and Malaysia has a long history of being very much pro youth development. Actually, even before independence, there were very strong youth associations in the country aimed at developing young people for leadership and so forth. Okay, so policy plays a very important role, and policies are very different across countries when it comes to youth. Malaysia has a very strong national youth policy. Even many of the states have state youth policies. We have a Ministry of Youth and Sports, of course. Many countries don't even have a national youth policy. One being the United States. My country doesn't have. Everything is very much localized. The way that communities and states deal with youth, it's very localized. There's nothing really national to guide youth development programs and organizations. Okay. So actually in Malaysia, I have very jealous friends in the US when we work together and I tell them about the national youth policy, they get very jealous. They say, oh, wow, you guys have a national youth policy over there? That's fantastic. We don't have that here. We wish we had that here. You know, so yeah, Malaysia is actually quite far along in that regard. So are there any questions about the previous slide about practices as well? The practices of youth development and the application of the principles. The difference between a program and an organization. Did everyone catch that? What's the difference between a youth program versus a youth organization? Because we often hear and talk about youth programs, but as you HRD people should know, many of you are HRD people, you should know from your HRD classes that very often one-off programs are not very effective, right?
Yes, it is.
Yep. See, yeah. See, you know that. You guys know that. So it's the same in youth development. Programs that have the greatest impact on youth development are those that are challenging, enduring. They last over time, right? So those that are taking place within organizations, because organizations are lasting, they're not one-off programs. Even though organizations may have and put on different programs, it's the organizations themselves that are lasting, not the programs, right? So that's why we have youth associations. Youth associations are organizations, they're not programs. So they provide a long-term platform for young people's development, right? Which is, you know, comprised of many different programs. You know, every month they may have programs and stuff, but it's over time. So young people can build relationships, they can get involved continuously in different types of programs and activities and so forth. Okay, so practices range, they vary, they're different. And that's why you don't, you know, the practices will always be different depending on the situation, depending on the context that's of where it's taking place. So don't ever think that development only takes place in youth programs. Okay, in fact, it's absolutely false. Youth development, first and foremost, takes place mostly in the family. All right, it takes place in school. It takes place in neighborhoods. It takes place in masjids and churches and so forth. It takes place in lots of different places, and now it takes place even in cyberspace. All right, but having, you know, young people involved in healthy programs and organizations is an important also contributor to youth development. Okay, so practices and then policies. Any questions, comments from anyone? Clear so far? You guys all approve of Haizum's presentation so far?
Prof, I have a question. How about
Yeah.
youth initiative? What does it mean? How does it differ from youth program?
Yeah. Often you see these things like initiatives that are, you know, you have a, I'm trying to think of an initiative here. You see like, what would be a good example of an initiative here? You may see like a 2 to 3 year initiative towards something. So for example, like a group of organizations gets together and they say they want to tackle a certain issue, right? And so maybe it's like something with the environment, or it can be any issue of concern, and they agree to work together for a certain amount of time, and maybe they get a certain amount of funding to do that from the government or from a foundation or something. But it's usually, their initiatives are usually issue-driven types of they're sort of big programs over a certain period of time, usually involve some sort of collaboration between youth associations, youth organizations, and they will work towards that goal of achieving something. Okay, so they want to spread awareness about a certain issue or something. All right, so it's sort of in between a program. It's not really a program. It's not really an organization. It's sort of in between. Okay, I'm trying to think of an example. I can't. So I'm blanking. Coalitions. You see a lot of coalitions of organizations. Those tend to be like initiatives, focusing on addressing some issue in society. Anyway, I'll think of one. Okay, so those, it's sort of like, it's not a program, not an organization. It's something that's longer term, and it sort of combines the elements of both. Okay, anything else? Any other questions? All right, Haizum?
All right. Okay, next, we will discuss the topic on the process and goals of youth development in details. All right, next. Okay, the process and goals. So as what we have discussed just now, development is a process, it's not a goal. Okay, this means that people continue to develop throughout their lifetimes. Therefore, promoting youth development is an enduring, overarching purpose, not a goal that is ever finally achieved. John 1938 captured this quality by noting that the purpose of development is to enable a person to continue to develop. Viewing development in this way complicates the identifications of goals. Rather than setting out concise, measurable behaviors, developmental goals identify demands for growth. Well, according to Colbert and Mayer, 1972, progress opposed to attainment is the key. All right, this circular quality of development makes it difficult to separate goals from methods for achieving goals. Goals and methods, ends and means, and process and products are intertwined. Because goal setting is such an important part of program planning, we will refer to developmental goals, recognizing that even though such goals are not always amenable to measurable outcomes or behavioral objectives, they can provide a helpful framework to guide actions. Okay, human qualities that we wish to promote can be described in multiple ways. A simple formulation is that development leads to the 5 C's according to Pittman, Irby, Tolman, Verhelm, and Farber, 2002. Okay, there are 5 C's over there: competence, character, connections, contributions, and confidence. Right. Okay, next.
So the 5 C, okay, so you're gonna go on the 5 C. Never mind, keep going.
Okay, the 5 C, right. The first one is the competence. Okay, includes knowledge and skills that enables a person to function more effectively, to understand and act on the environment. Means competence enables a person to accomplish what he or she intends, provided external circumstances are favorable. or to adapt to circumstances to achieve as much as possible. Okay, the second one is character. The character is what makes a person intend to do what is just right and good. All right, the third C will be the connections. It refers to social relations, especially with adults, but also with peers and with younger children. Fourth will be the confidence. It is the assuredness a person needs to act effectively. It enables a person to demonstrate and build competence and character in challenging situations. The last one, the last C will be the contributions. It means that a person uses these other attributes not only for self-centered purposes, but also to give to others. Okay, notice that none of these developmental goals has an upper limit. One is never perfectly competent or of such high character that no further progress is needed. However, it is possible to get out of balance, especially with connections and confidence. Okay, young people gain competence and character by being connected with others, okay, especially caring adults, and their competence and character in turn help them form new connections. Confidence flow from competence and the two mutual reinforce each other. Finally, contributions demonstrate one's character and provide an outlet for competence. Okay, that will be the 5 C's, the qualities that been discussed by that authors.
Okay, so what do you understand about these 5 C's? How do we use these 5 C's in youth development? I mean, what are they for?
It is somehow the qualities that how to say are in the dalam diri that youth lah. So we use the qualities to maybe to develop programs for them.
Okay.
That's what I understand. Sorry if I wrongly understand that.
Never be sorry in trying to answer a question in class. No. Yeah, sure. You're absolutely right. Anyone else want to share? What do we understand these to be? These 5 C's. How would we use these if we were involved in a youth program or if we were developing a youth development program? How might we use these developmental goals, as they said? Come on, HRD people. You guys are program planners, trainers. So you're doing a program for youth. How would you use these 5 C's?
Actually,
Everyone's having work from home issues. It's okay. We're all
actually,
we're all in the same boat.
it is a quick kind of guidelines where we have to think of whenever we develop a program, such as to what extent the youth are competent enough. If they need skills, then we focus on skills. If they need knowledge, then it will be different. This is a kind of guideline that quick and ad hoc when we think of to develop a program.
Okay, all right. Okay, very good. Huda, anyone else want to share?
Prof?
Yeah, Mahfuz.
From what I've seen from the session, these 5 are the basic so-called output in every program that we can when we handle youth. Because this C's we will be used in not only for youth but everywhere. In order to develop a person, this is the basic characteristic that need to be put in youth.
Good. Yeah. Very good. Yeah, I would agree. And we had a couple that are writing in the chat box here. So Mutiara said developmental goals, basically the field that we want our participants to master. Okay, and then Rashikina, this is the quality that we want after producing the program. So yeah, I mean, these are outcomes. This is what we want to see at the end of the day. So if you're working from a strengths-based perspective and you're working from a positive developmental perspective, again, you don't focus on, well, at the end of this program, we want to see them no longer using drugs. Of course, we would want to see that, but that's not a way of building a developmental approach into the program. Developmental approach means you're focusing on what you want to see, not what you don't want to see. Okay? if you focus your program on what you want to see young people do at the end of the program, what you want to see them accomplish at the end of the program, what you want to see from them, then you work from something like the 5 C's perspective. So at the end of the program, we want our young people to have strong character. We want them to be confident. Okay, we want them to be well connected to others, right? And in fact, there's different renditions of the 5 C's. Now they have the 6 C's, and they've added things like caring to it. Malaysia has the 8 C's in its youth policy. They've added others like I think competitiveness and something else. There's a few others. Anyway, they have 8 C's. Your Malaysian youth policy has 8 C's. So there's some different renditions, but essentially it's the same philosophy. It's what you want to see at the end of the day, right? So you work towards that, towards what you want young people to see, or what you want to see in young people rather than the opposite, okay? Because just because a young person maybe stops using drugs, which is a good thing, of course, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are what we would call thriving or prepared to really be successful. It just means that they've stopped that one at-risk behavior, okay? And if you focus on that, again, like we mentioned, research has shown that tends to repeat. There tends to be a lot of recidivism, okay, in those types of programs, right? So this is the approach that comes with, it's a goal-oriented approach. It's an outcome-based approach, right? And not every program has to include all 5, right? You may have, have programs that just focusing on building young people's confidence, okay? But like the article says, to do that, of course, you have to have elements of competence in there as well. For young people to be confident, they have to also be competent. They have to know what they're doing. They have to have knowledge and skills to have that confidence, right? So they're often interlinked. They're often intertwined, right? But it's been shown to be a much more effective way of doing youth programs. Okay. So let's have Haizum do one more slide and then we'll take our break. Remember, we wanted to take more shorter breaks tonight, according to the article I sent on the WhatsApp group, remember? To keep everybody fresh and, Okay, so Haizum, continue and then we'll take a break.
Okay, all right. Okay, I will continue. Okay, this actually what Prof said just now. The summarizations of the 5 C's. Okay. Okay, it is briefly summarize the goals of youth development. They are useful as a quick mental checklist when thinking about what a particular program, organizations, or initiative offers to you. It can provide a focus for community-wide initiatives. However, it is broad enough to pose challenges when it comes to designing and evaluating programs. Programs might try to enhance the competence of young people in a multitude of ways and across a range of contexts or setting. Sorry, I cannot focus. Okay, or setting. Sorry, the baby just wake up, making it difficult to know when progress occurs and what led to it. For program planning purposes, a longer, finer grained analysis of the goals of development is needed. Okay, next.
We're a youth-friendly class, so don't worry.
Okay. All right. Next is the topic about terminology of personal and social assets in youth development. Okay, these are another categories or qualities apart from that five qualities that can be used to help policymaker in designing and evaluating programs for youth. Okay, these authoritative summations of the critical domains of youth development was provided by the Committee on Community Level Programs for Youth, convened by the National Research Council and Institute of Medicine. Okay, adopting the terminology of personal and social assets. Okay, as you can see in the table 1.1 over there, they categorize these assets as physical, intellectual, psychological, and emotional, and also social development.
So these are, of course, based in the US, mostly based on research done in the US, although now research on youth development is pretty much global. They've done studies all over the place, including Malaysia. We've done many studies on youth development here as well. So, but we have to realize that when this article is writing. They're writing from the U.S. perspective. So these institutions they're talking about, like the Search Institute and the others, they are U.S. based. But of course, like Search Institute, they have this thing called the 40 Assets. Maybe you've heard of the 40 Assets of Youth Development. That's another framework of that identifies youth development goals, right, or youth development outcomes. And we're going to learn about that in a minute. But these are all different frameworks of positive youth development, essentially. Okay, there's overlap, of course, between them. Like this one here, this list goes into more detail, obviously, than the 5 C's. The 5 C's is a much more general, a broader kind of summary of youth development goals, whereas this one is much more specific, right? But it's the same positive, strengths-based approach, looking at what we want to see in young people, what are the outcomes that we want our programs to achieve, and what we want to see in young people. Okay, so it's the same main philosophy, principles are the same, but again, a little bit different in terms of its content and its sort of structure and so forth. All right. So this one looks at psychological and emotional development, social development, intellectual development, as well as physical development. So it has 4 core domains, right? Okay, so you can see that it's much more in depth. The indicators are more specific, in other words. Okay, so for program development, again, it depends. Like if you are a big, say you're a community, a community wants to improve, the competence of its young people in general, right? So maybe the community will agree that most of our youth development programs this year are going to focus on competency building, right? It's general enough that you can have a variety of different types of programs that all fit under that sort of competency umbrella. Whereas this list, you can tailor, you can come up with more specific programs, right? Like those that look at good eating habits, right, or good health habits, right? So it's more specific. So it might be more useful for program development, for specific programs, rather than big initiatives or community-wide sort of policy goals for programming and so forth. Okay, so again, these are different lists, different ways of formulating positive youth development. Okay, any questions about that so far? Additional questions? Clear. Okay, so if it's clear, then why don't we take our break now? Because I hear the azan. We can take our Margaret break now. So we'll stop for about 20 minutes now, okay? I'll take our break a little bit earlier tonight. Stay fresh, stay fresh. Okay. And then maybe, so hi Zoom, don't worry about having to attend to your motherly duties. It's quite all right. We're all in the same boat, so. Okay, so we'll stop there and we'll come back in about 20 minutes, okay? All right, see you guys. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome back. For those who are online. Okay, so can we get started? Is Haizum still presenting, or are you guys gonna hand it over to somebody else?
I'm gonna continue Haizum, Prof.
Okay, Huda, take it away.
Okay. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable Prof and friends, I am Huda. I will explain further about the principles for promoting youth development. Okay, in really understand the Stephen Hamilton articles, he draw very general and in fact quick guidelines and principles that should encompass us while thinking about youth development programs, which is as stated in the 3 aspects should be taken into consideration. All aspects of youth thrive. That's mean including building on strength, universality, services, support and opportunities, race, ethnicity, class and gender, However, in order to really understand what is article all about, so there are few articles that I believe will complement to understand the what is article all about. Okay, so after all, according to Hamilton, positive orientation is the best understood in developing youth. Okay, so next, mana Zila? Next, okay. All right, there are 4 approaches that used by Lillian and Daniel Sheck in 2019. The article by Hamilton led me to refer to this article because what is actually positive orientation in youth development? So according to this article, adolescents have the potential of systematic change over the developmental course because, as my team said earlier, complexity of the process, biology, contextual factors, and psychological aspect which later interweave each other. Okay, so it explains what approaches that to use specifically in youth development. So, in terms of positive youth development, Lillian said that it leads 4 approaches, which 5C and developmental asset, which the 2 guidelines approaches to think of. And then another 2 is the 15 positive youth development construct, which comprises all the 15 constructs, what to cater on. And then the social emotional learning approach. The social emotional learning approach is focused on more strength promotion and environmental enhancement to what extent it can affect the youth development. Okay. In fact, youth development, it is very diverse in approaches. So that are the reason why Stephen Hamilton stated it easier to designate a series of principles rather than to state the principle precisely in particular programs. Okay, that's why, because in order to gain public and community support, the set principle must be broad enough in order, because human attributes changes over time and any specificity will likely trigger or later lead to disagreement of the public. Okay. Okay kah? Faham?
Okay, so I appreciate and like the fact that you brought in outside literature to help you explain more on the content of the article. So that's very good. So you can see here 4 different models of PYD. Okay, so again, all have the same goal, all in the same direction, but different ways of conceptualizing it. Because again, there are differences depending on context. The scholars that develop these may be referring to different data, different studies, perhaps. The goals of the models may be a bit different, depending on how they're supposed to be used. You know, the level of specificity, right? 5 C's as opposed to 15 constructs, right? So obviously, if you wanted to develop a program, it's going to be very difficult to include all 15 constructs in one program, right? So obviously, that's not meant. It's not meant to be that way, right? So it gives people a choice in how they go about doing it, but all with the same kind of philosophy behind it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So please.
Okay.
Proceed.
Okay then. Next slide would be on what is all youth thrive. Okay. In promoting youth development, we have to have this basis and then as foundation, which is the program should cover all the youth thrive. Prior, me myself doesn't really clear what is thrive is all about. So by referring literally to Oxford Dictionary meanings, which is stated thrive is to grow, to develop, and to prosper. But for us in developing youth development, the context of literal definition is insufficient. So we refer to an article written by Charlene Harper Brown, 2014, from the Center for the Study of Social Policy, which all youth thrive is all about. This article explained about this. This article stated about it is a framework which strength-based initiative and aim at examining on how all youth can be supported in advance healthy development and well-being. as well as to reduce the likelihood or impact of the negative life experiences. Even the initiative is concerned with promoting positive outcome, but this center is committed in improving the children with vulnerable groups, especially those who are receiving welfare services or youth in the foster care system. So because they said that youth in these systems really needs and deserve the same opportunities, experience and high expectation as well as other youth in the community. Okay, but then the All Youth Thrive, this article explain me what is the concept All Youth Thrive is all about. Okay, because it lays under the 6 foundational ideas which can be seen in the slide, including strength-based perspective theory, the biological of stress, the resilient theory, positive youth development, focus on well-being, and also the nature of risk protective and promotive factors. These are the ideas that has to cater when developing a program for the youth. Okay.
Okay, so the idea of all youth thriving is actually a very important concept in youth development. So because again, positive youth development came about as a response to the focus on programs that deal specifically with problem behaviors, right? So previously, when youth programs were developed, they were developed to address specific behaviors. Okay, so teen pregnancy program, drug abuse program, like Pusat Serenti or something. And of course, research has found that, as we said before, it creates this labeling effect where once young people get labeled as being problematic, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in that they tend to repeat those kind of behaviors, right? All Youth Thrive means, positive youth development means that it's for all young people. It's not for just specific groups or problematic groups. It means that all young people have the same opportunities and the same chances, the same possibilities of being successful and thriving. Okay, so PYD is very rarely targeted towards specific groups of youth. It's typically programs for all young people, and giving all young people the same chance at thriving. Okay, so that's the universality aspect of PYD, of youth development. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions about that? Any question? Okay.
Prof.
Yeah.
Is it universality? Is it the same with generalized? I mean, the program we plan the program to be very general. Is it the same?
Yes, the issue is.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I will explain after this.
Yep. Huda, you want to answer his question? Huda.
No, I will explain in my next slide.
Okay, so let's listen to the next slide, Hadi, and then we'll see if we have to go back to your question, okay? Okay, Huda, go ahead.
Okay, this is about the next slide. Okay, the next slide, then we come to the gist what Stephen F. Hamilton and et al. Want to express the issue when we laid down the principles in developing youth program. Okay, according to them, it is they said that all youth thrive. It is the aspect that absolutely diverse in approach according to the type of services and also rely on the funding sources. For example, each problem is the domain of a different federal agency, so the program will mirror the federal structure. Okay, for example, Ministry of Youth and Sport, they aim in developing youth, but when it is accompanied in terms of education or any vulnerable group, the other federal agency will have to take part because of it are their responsibilities. Okay, in terms of building on strength, the issue here is to determine what would be the best ways to solve the problems, because this aspect are mainly to cater youth who grew up under conditions that usually led to serious or risky problem. It not all the youth. The issue arises when it is conducted in the school setting you gather a group of risk student or kind of problematic, there will be kind of stigmatized and labeling may then occur to them, so that they will affect by indirect means to the group. Okay. Another aspect is universality, which is Hadid addressed just now. It relies heavily on the fact of differentiation of needs and necessities of the youth in order to support their development. Because some youth might need on development self, on how to survive and how to sustain life, particularly during pandemic, whereas some fortunate youth need opportunities to pursue study in more comfort way. Perhaps they want aircon, they want internet, they want more more sophisticated gadget. Okay, and then another aspect, which is services, support, and opportunities should be made available to all. So you should be have opportunities to learn, opportunities to explore, play, express oneself, and by definition are they taken up voluntarily by young person to have made them available. But again, when we come to universality, the services, support, and opportunities might be different. So these are the triggering issues that raised by Hamilton L. And another aspect, which is race, ethnicity, class, and gender, which is the video of Ireland practice. Stratification of society might differ with Malaysia's stratification of society because level of mental class or education, social upbringing, financial and economic stability, again being the issues, can we done, can we did, or can we have a good programs like they are doing, and also what we can do in gender aspect pula. Gender aspect is another powerful source of for a source of difference. But very recent, Ministry of Women perceive that we can see 2019 statistic by the Ministry of Education, girls or women really outnumbered in percentage in tertiary level, whereas not men. But however, in terms of gender perceived in employment are again different. So these are the aspects that have to be taken care of well before conducting youth development program. Okay, and then
Sorry, can I just join in here? So in terms
yes,
of your question, Hadi, so universality, I think who did a good job of explaining, but universality essentially means that in a youth development approach, all young people need access to opportunities for their development. They need supports, they need opportunities and services. However, those specific services, opportunities, and supports will be different depending on the setting, depending on the context, depending on the needs of the young people. Okay. So the universality is that youth development, or PYD, is for all young people, not just those with problems. All right. And that's what universality refers to. It's inclusive of everybody. However, depending on things like race, ethnicity, class, gender, needs, what those programs look like, how those programs are designed will be probably different, right? And that's why the focus is on principles and not specific practices so much, right? Because if you use principles, it allows for flexibility and creativity if needed, right? And applying in different ways. All right, so it's a more flexible approach. So yeah, like that's a good example. Comparing like Iceland to Malaysia. Okay, so the principles are the same, but how Malaysia, for example, if Malaysia was to adopt Iceland's model, right? Iceland's model had 5 core components: curfew, family time, youth programs, and opportunities for positive experiences and so forth. Research, and then political will really was the role of politicians. So all 5 of those we could fit under services, supports, and opportunities, right? So a curfew is what? Is it a service, a support, or an opportunity?
It's the support.
It's a support, right? It's like, it's what we would call a healthy boundary, right? Providing those sort of healthy boundaries for young people, right? Meaning that there's certain times at night that young people should not be out on the streets, right? They should be home. So it's a support. Parents pledge to devote more time to the family. Is that a support, opportunity, or service?
It is support again.
It's a
Because
support.
parent pledge.
Yeah, it is. It's a support. Parents play a critical supporting role in the lives of young people. So to spend more time with parents and family is definitely a form of support for youth development. Now, youth programs, like they said, they spend $100 million a year on youth programs. Support, opportunity, or service?
A youth program is a program.
Service.
Support.
It's a service.
Support.
Service.
Well, in this case, the kinds of programs they're talking about, things like horseback riding, swimming, bola, those kind of programs that they're talking about are what type of program? What are they? Are they services, supports, or opportunities?
Opportunities.
Yeah, they would probably go under opportunities. Good, Fatin. Because services in this particular instance refers to basic services like healthcare, food, education. Okay, so we're talking about basic services, right? So the kinds of things that, like, during a pandemic, you want to make sure that everybody has basic services, basic needs are met. Okay, so they have shelter and stuff like that. Because there's a lot of young people out there in the world that they don't even have shelter. They don't even have food to eat every day. They don't have health care. So you can't be talking about, youth programs like horseback riding when you don't even have enough food on your table, right? So you have to start, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have to start with the fundamental services first. Only then can you build on the others. And that it's an important part of youth development. Those basic needs have to be met first. Okay, so then you have the youth programs, which are opportunities for thriving, for building competencies, for building soft skills, building leadership skills, all those things. That's opportunities for them to learn, for thriving. Then you have youth research. What is youth research? Is that a support, opportunity, or service?
It is a support as well as services. Because to support the needs of the program, why we need data.
Okay, all right.
There should be research on that.
Okay, so why did you say service also?
Service because it is service of the federal agency to know and to identify the needs. To what extent needs I have to cater urgently and to prioritize all the needs.
Sure. So I think you're right. I think it could, because it definitely, I'm sure it informs their service provision. It informs how they provide services. But it is definitely a support. It's in and of itself, it's definitely a support to youth development. And then the last one, which was political will, getting the politicians involved. What is that?
After all, to get the undi.
No, but I mean, when he talks about getting the politicians involved, why is it important to get the politicians involved? To get the politicians in support, to support this thing. What is that?
Support.
I gave it away. It's a support. It's a big support. It's a huge support. Imagine if the politicians in Malaysia one day just said, you know what, we're just going to close the Ministry of Youth and Sports. Right?
Can get perantukan.
Yeah. I mean, there goes all of the funding for all the youth programs and youth activities. Right. Mutiara said without government, people can't do anything. So, yeah, it's a very, very critical support. Absolutely. So I think a lot of what they're doing there seems to be in the area of more of support. But of course, within that one, number 3, the youth program offerings that they have, I think, are quite extensive, $100 million a year. Iceland is a very small country, so that's a lot of money, right? And you can even see from the video, the facilities look very nice, right? So I think, but you can see, if you break it down, even that model of those 5 things in Iceland breaks down to those services, supports, and opportunities. Okay, so, all right. Is that clear? Anyone have any questions? No? Okay, so Huda, please continue.
Okay, next is another article that we referred to is in order to identify to what extent the usage of principles in PYD, Positive Youth Development in Malaysia context. It is article by Arshad Ismail, Nawi and Nasrinhan in promoting developmental asset. Okay, this is one of the principles that being explained in previous slides. Okay, actually in this article, I really understand on the PWD definition in this article because it cater about PY positive youth development rests in two main concepts, which is in this article focus, inherent strength and asset. It against back to the nature versus nurture, and then well-being will be enhanced via reaction to the surrounding interaction. Okay, how does the positive youth development come from? Which initial stem? It is from the psychological concept, then comparison made by the psychologists, biologists in human development, which is then after all, it is a concept of transformation in via youth development programs. It requires external and internal support, and then will arise the joint benefit to the youth. Okay, so after all, macam tu lah faham ni Pak Prof.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay, then in order to develop a programs, after all, it is a need to focus on building up abilities and competencies that help the youth to navigate their adulthood. They might have their hidden potential that we don't really explore enough. Okay.
Right.
And then in addition, Malaysia also indeed committed in a part of this article, Malaysia also indeed committed into 2030 sustainable agenda, which can be reflected and observed via the shared prosperity vision, which is Wawasan Kemakmuran Bersama 2030. And also youth are the part of the groups that prioritize in the implementation of this wawasan in order to ensure their socio-economic well-being.
Okay, so you were referring to this study, this slide here, just now.
Yes.
Okay,
The
so
slide
let me give a general comment on the use of PowerPoint. Okay, studies have shown that effective use of PowerPoint. This is just an aside. This is an aside based on what you just presented. Studies have shown that effective use of PowerPoint is when there is consistency with what is being shown on the screen and what the speaker is speaking about. Okay.
Okay.
So just now, no, this is for all of us to learn. It's very important actually when we do presentations. So just now when you were presenting, I was reading your slide, but I was reading something different than what I was hearing from you. And so what happens is my attention is split now, and I can't really focus on either one.
Okay.
You know what I mean? What you've done is you've actually split the audience's attention. So it's hard for the audience to really follow along. And that makes it harder for the audience to really remember and internalize what you're trying to say. So it's always a good idea to when you use PowerPoint, make sure that you go back and forth between pointing to what's on the slide, whether it's just a bullet point or you're reading something, and then going back to yourself. So there's consistency. It's either one or the other. It's not both at the same time. Faham?
Okay.
Okay.
Because I'm not controlling the slide, that's why.
Okay, but you were talking about this slide, right? In what you were just talking about.
It is a slide that 3 young people. Okay, not this one yet. The previous slide.
Okay.
No. The slide that positive youth development by article by Arshad Ismail. Next. Oh, there's something missing.
Maybe it's the next slide after. The next one?
No, one more.
Next one?
No. I think there is a missing slide there.
Oh, okay.
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 That's why I'm not.
That's okay. Okay. Just try to orient the audience. You know, in terms of what you're seeing on the screen and what you're saying, so that they're aware. Okay. That's all. Okay. So, sorry. Continue.
There might be missing slide, Prof. Okay. I will just as a partner for the implementation of the SDG. Okay, there is a slide missing there.
Okay.
But then I will about the sustainable development SDG, which shows the commitment of Malaysia.
Okay, so this is
Being
Malaysia.
part of the wawasan kemakmuran bersama. Okay. If we see the DOSM, the Department of Statistics Malaysia statistic, there will be about 45.4% of the population is youth, but then the age is taken between 15 to 39. This
Right.
is prior the new defined age is announced.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
Then in order to really cater about the youth development, Malaysia being part of the partner in the implementation of the SDG,
Okay.
and then prioritize the target according to the participation, empowerment, and well-being among the youth. Okay, and then Malaysia also being really strategic partner with the UN, and UN exclusively put in chapter 2, which is special for youth and SDG, to what to what extent and what kind of programs that really and that really have to focus, when being used as important component for the development agenda. Okay.
So Malaysia has been using this language for many years. This idea of youth as partners in development, youth as partners in development. So here now it's youth as partners for implementation of the SDGs. That idea is very interesting, and it's actually quite rare to see countries using that kind of language, youth as partners. Now, some would say, well, it's just nice language. It looks good in policies, but is it really being implemented? This is some of the criticism on this. And of course, yeah, there's research that shows that it is possibly somewhat politically driven, that kind of language. And then in terms of practice, but I think there is definitely a commitment by the Malaysian government has had a strong commitment to youth development in the country. There's no question. But the idea of youth as partners is something that is just beginning, I think, to really, in terms of practice, is really starting to take. People are starting to take it a bit more seriously, right? I've done a lot of research actually in Malaysia on youth-adult partnership, which is something we will discuss later in the semester. All right, and it's something that's very interesting. We'll cover that later. I don't want to get off topic today. So, okay. So go ahead.
Okay. Again, another slide will be Malaysia perspective in youth development. As shown in the slide, Malaysia has come out via Index Belia Malaysia 2019, 8 groups of Malaysia in Malaysia. A part of youth in a very general aspect, there are 8 groups in order to very focus their social and psychological well-being as well as the quality of life of youth. Okay, these are the 8 groups, among the 8 groups. And then yeah, indeed they are concerned with the differentiation needs to be focused and to be developed, right? A part of universality. Okay, and then how could it is annually revised as well as via portal Ibelia. There is when ministry see the needs, how the needs is gathered, how the information and the data is gathered in order to develop a program for cater for special needs to special groups. Okay, and another big picture, which is the Minister of the Youth and Sports, it is stated that youth development is not solely the responsibilities of one ministry. So that is the reason program kolaborasi rentas kementerian are developed. Okay, it can be shown by next slide, which is in our recent budget announcement, which indeed covering the commitment to develop youth and cover all aspects in youth strive, which is including the employment, sports development program, the Cone Sport Scheme, which again in relation to the employment, the Cone Sport Scheme, esports, health programs, and technology. I believe this budget announcement and initiative is made via the data that collected all over the research from all over universities. Not they are solely doing it as they like, as they wish to. Okay.
Yeah.
And then another slide is just an elaboration. If it arises a question regarding the 6 foundational ideas by the Youth Thrive, and these are the explanation by the Charlene Harper Brown. And then but that is the difference in 6 C's, where they come out with a new C, which on the cognitive spirituality, I believe. But still, I don't have the exact articles on that. So that's all from my part.
Okay, thank you, Huda. Any questions for Huda? So Huda included some of her own materials into the presentation, which is very nice. Okay, no problem there, as long as it's still on topic, which is very good. So yeah, so very interesting. So it just shows the variety of ways that scholars have formulated PYD models, okay, the different models out there, right? And these are mostly used for practice. You know, these are mostly used by practitioners who are designing programs or policymakers. And if later when we look at the Malaysian youth and youth policy, we're going to see that there's 2 particular models that the Malaysian youth policy incorporates into its overall framework, which is the 8 C's and the developmental assets. But Malaysia has 48 rather than 40 developmental assets. Okay, so these are the 2 core frameworks that they're using. So UPM, our youth team at UPM, we were involved in training ministry staff on the youth policy, the national youth policy. So we did a series of trainings with state youth development officers, sports development officers, a variety of different officers within the ministry. And what's very interesting is that many of them, even though there's a national youth policy that they're supposed to be working from, many of them are actually not working from that policy, okay? In fact, they knew very little about the policy, right? And so that's a problem because, you know, that's the whole purpose of the policy, is to really provide guidance on those goals and outcomes that they're trying to achieve, that they're supposed to be trying to achieve from their work, right? From their programs. But many of them are not actually working, they're not operationalizing the policy, right? It's not really alive, it's not real to them in terms of how they go about planning their programs. So this is, of course, it's problematic because what's the point of having the policy if it's not being implemented? Yeah, so that's why they asked us to do these series of trainings. And unfortunately, it was only a sort of one-off kind of training thing. And there's a lot more that's needed along those lines. Okay, so who's up next? Our last speaker.
Okay, Assalamualaikum, Prof. and fellow friends. So I will be sharing about practices for promoting youth development. So, so we have been listening to regarding the principles. So if the principles that mentioned earlier by Huda are valid, then putting them into practice will promote youth development. So this statement is in line with the recommendation of the Committee on Community Level Program for Youth that was in the US, which produced this list of features of settings that promote youth development. So currently, these 8 features of effective youth development settings serve as quality standard for youth programs. So, so referring to table 1.3 here, this table actually explains the description of each features and also the opposite poles for each. So I will just share a little bit on every features. So the physical and psychological safety. So it explains that young people need to experience physical and emotional safety in their daily lives. So with this kind of support, they are able to confidently explore their full range of options for becoming productive and connected. So the second one is appropriate structure. This means that in practice, the program should have clear rules, expectations, and responsibilities. So these rules need to be clear and communicated regularly. So youth also should involve in creating the rules. It said that because rules that are embraced by youth when they are direct input in the development of the rules. The third one is supportive relationship. So this means that successful youth programs develop a family-like atmosphere. You should have warmth, closeness, connectedness, good communication. So the program also should have adults involved in the activities and events. So it provides a trusted connection will be formed and maintained throughout the program. So number 4, opportunities to belong. Opportunities for meaningful inclusion, which means that the program should provide opportunities for positive group experience. So here is said that opportunities for social, cultural identity formation is some of the examples. So next is positive social norms. So norms here, I believe it's about culture. So all groups develop accepted practices. So every group of people that has sustained interaction develops a set of habits, norms, and expectations. So this should also be in program for youth. So number 6 is support for efficacy and mentoring. This means that both individually and in groups, the program provide youth with opportunity to be useful and be able to make a difference in their social worlds. So practices that focus on improvement rather than on relative current performance levels only. Number 7 is opportunities for skill building. So activities should provide youth with opportunities to build their skills, such as emotional and social skills, media literacy, communication skills, good habits of minds. So this is for their preparation to become adults. The program also should provide learning opportunities that are interactive, reflective, and engage multiple learning styles. Number 8 is integration of family, school, and community. A quality youth program will initiate cooperations and communications with parents, schools, and general community. This collaboration is to offer the rich developmental context that help young people succeed. Competencies grow through opportunities to practice skills in a variety of situations. So, Prof, any comment?
Yeah,
on
so this is a
features?
very important list. So what do you understand this list to be, as opposed to all those other frameworks that Hudas shared with us?
So when practicing, we should incorporate all these features into the program, initiatives, and the organizations that we have for youth. So we have safety, have structure, have supportive relationship. We should have all these features when we do the programs or initiatives.
Right. So how does it?
That's
How
what I
does that?
understand.
Yeah. How does that differ from, say, like the 5 C's?
The 5 C's is the outcome, right? What youth should have in the end.
Right.
So how to have that is through having these settings, these features.
Right. So it's inputs, basically it's
These
inputs and
elements.
outputs. So
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So if we want to see those outcomes that we spoke about earlier, all the different frameworks, but especially like the 5 C's, these are the attributes of whatever developmental setting you're talking about, whether it's a program, Even if it's an educational setting, you can apply these same 8 aspects. Okay, so these are the features that if we have all 8 of these features there, if they're all present in those, whatever setting it is, program, organization, whatever, then, you know, the idea is that hopefully at the end of the day, you'll see those outcomes achieved, right? So it's sort of like inputs and outputs, okay? So these are referred to as the sort of indicators of youth program quality, okay? What a quality, positive youth development program looks like, all right? So unfortunately, this, according to many, is what is missing from those policies that focus on outcomes, but they don't really explain how to achieve those outcomes, right? So again, as many of us complain, we always say, oh, we have such beautiful policies, but the implementation is not there, right? Everyone says that implementation is not there. This is the implementation, okay? So if these features of implementation are there, present in the program, hopefully we would see those positive outcomes, okay? So yeah, so this is a very important table when it comes to developing positive youth development programs. And again, this is all based on research, extensive research. Okay? All right, Zila?
So, okay. So according to the article, so the committee, these features are associated with progress toward the developmental goals they identified. This is the 20 external assets that we mentioned earlier. So they said that the features is according to the list. Okay, and then this list also echoes the Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, which begins with survival needs and continues to self-actualization. So the author said the safety was not emphasized, but it is clearly fundamental. But it was mentioned, right? Safety was mentioned, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So
again, yeah,
the authors also, yes. So the author also said that the challenge to practitioner is actually to figure out how to create environments that bring these features to life.
Right.
Also, they mentioned about the last feature, integration of family, school, and community efforts. It may raises exceptionally complex sets of issues because it comprises of the ecology of human development, so all involved in this ecology.
Absolutely,
so I'm
absolutely.
not sure. So this is also a challenge to the practitioners. Okay, trying to integrate efforts across settings involve building systems. So we need a system to actually make this success. So they also mentioned about the term community youth development that is often used. This is to capture community-wide initiatives. So for some, this may seem redundant because by definition, youth development involves attempts to make communities healthier places for young people to live. But however, the author said it find helpful to differentiate because community-wide mobilization may differ to individual programs or organizations. So they actually emphasize on community, right? Of community youth development.
Yeah. So I mean, that's also that's also relates to the idea that most youth programs take place within the context of communities, right? So there's always, because even if there's school-based programs or after-school programs, you know, they often occur within the sort of community that those young people live in. Right. Of course, when you get to older youth, like, young people in their 20s and even, early 30s and so forth, like in Malaysia, of course, then it sort of extends beyond the physical community. But still, community tends to play a very big role in youth development in many countries, Your point here about the integration of family, school, and community efforts raises an exceptionally complex set of issues. Yeah, that's very true. Of course, research has shown that involvement of the family is very important in any kind of youth development initiative. So the more that you can get parents involved is going to be better. It's going to be important. One of the things that we found in our study that we did that I'm going to be presenting about on Friday with the youth workers nowadays is that a lot of youth workers in other countries, especially not so much in Malaysia, but in other countries, they mentioned that during COVID-19, they had a lot of trouble trying to get in touch with young people. A lot of parents were against the youth workers trying to work with their kids, all right? And not really sure exactly why, but like in some countries, like in Uganda, for example, it's a very conservative country, and they're very careful about what technology they allow their young people, like the parents, they allow their kids to use. Like they don't allow, extensive use of hand phones and stuff like that. Also, it's a very poor country, so many of the families that cannot afford technology. But they had, youth workers had a lot of difficulty during COVID-19 trying to work with the youth because of the parents. The parents, in many cases, refused to allow their kids to actually get in touch and do things with the youth workers. So sometimes family can even be a barrier to youth development initiatives and programs, right? And so that's why youth worker, it's always better if they can try to form partnerships with parents, with families in the community, right? Using a community approach, it facilitates the involvement of parents and families oftentimes, right? So for example, if you can do a youth program at the community masjid where the families are already involved, right? You sort of kill two birds with one stone. You get the community involved as well as the families. And so that's the kind of the idea. And that creates these sort of systems of youth development, right? So you have involvement from school, community, parents, youth, right? So it creates a sort of system of healthy development for young people. And so that's why community is usually very important in the process, right? So, that, I think that wraps it up. Is there anything else, Zila? You have anything else for us?
It just the last part of the article mentioned about system. So this definition of system is actually makes a different system or program or from program. So system should be inclusive, internally coherent, externally connected, and endures. So what I understand from here is that we need a system to actually help youth through the programs.
Yeah.
So that's actually wraps.
Right. So like, take like the what are the in Malaysia you have those communities, they're called the public housing, is it PPR? What is it, the public housing program? PPR, isn't it?
Program Perumahan Rakyat.
Yeah. So like in those types of communities, often there's this gap. Like, so for example, and that's why I think in a lot of those communities, this is true in other countries as well, you see higher rates of, for example, youth crime, youth drug abuse and stuff like that. They lack that system of healthy development. So for example, in many of those types of communities, you have very big families living in very small apartments or flats or whatever, right? So for young people, especially teenagers and youth, they don't want to be stuck in that kind of environment. It's very difficult. There's no social opportunities to socialize, and they're bored, and so they're young people. They want to be out. So they don't spend a lot of time in the house. When they go outside into the community, there's very little in terms of healthy opportunities, programs, activities, right? They lack that. And then they oftentimes are not well connected to school. Maybe they don't do very well in school. They're not very interested in school. So they don't get a lot of support in the schools. And so you have these, in the system of youth development, within the community itself, you have a lot of gaps. And this is where young people tend to fall through. This is why things like gangs become very attractive to young people in those areas as well. We don't have this consistent net or network of support, of healthy relationships, of healthy opportunities, and so forth. And even in some cases, they don't even have their basic needs met, like we talked about before about services, right?
Food.
Yeah, especially now, like during pandemic situations, it's even worse. It gets magnified even worse. That's why a lot of people now are very concerned about what's going to happen in the long term from this pandemic, because young people growing up in those sort of at-risk environments, they were already at risk to begin with. Now with the pandemic, you have, the all the different stresses that this pandemic is causing in terms of economics, in terms of basic needs, education, what is going to happen long term from a developmental perspective of all these young people growing up in those at-risk environments? You know, it's really, really concerning if you think about it. You know, and nobody really knows, because this is unprecedented. We've never had this kind of pandemic crisis before. You know, but people, there's a lot of people that are very concerned about the long-term effects of this pandemic on young people's development, especially the at-risk groups, right? So it gives us an idea of the importance of having of young people living in healthy communities where there's a system of support, a system of opportunity, and people are working together to help young people thrive. Okay, so that said, is that it, Lila?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Huda,
Okay.
Haizum, and Zila for the presentation.
Thank you, Prof.
So are there any follow-up questions or comments? No, okay. So if that was all clear, which I hope it was, there's just one, we're gonna just do one short activity before we call it a night. Okay, this is in Putra Blast. I'm gonna post a link here in the chat box. Okay, so I've posted this link here. What I want you to do is I want you just to go in, think about the video we showed and then the article presentation. I want you to see if you can come up with any, I want you to critique the positive youth development approach based on what your understanding of it is to this point. Even if it's just one thing, if you have more than one thing, that's great. And I want you to go and post it on Padlet. Go into the link there and post it on Padlet. Think about what might be some of the drawbacks of this approach to working with youth. Think about in terms of specific demographic groups, maybe, you know, specific situations. Maybe just in general, you see that there's things about how it's formulated, or maybe it's too optimistic, or anything. Think of a critique, even if it's just one, a critique of this approach, because there are many critiques actually of it in the literature. You'll find some, you'll find them. So I'm just wondering see if you can come up with something. So just take 5 minutes and try to do that.
Prof, can we refer to any program, specific program?
Sure, if you want, yeah, if you want to base it on an example that you've seen, you know, that's great, that's fine, no problem. Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be theoretical. It can be an actual example.
Doctor, I want to ask.
Sorry, Mutiara?
Doctor, I want to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we have to make critiques based on the video or any types of program that we encounter, perhaps, I don't know.
I want you to critique the positive youth development approach itself. Now you can use a particular program or policy as an example. So for example, you may critique you know, the approach used in the Malaysian youth policy or something, or like Huda mentioned a specific program, or Zila mentioned a specific program. That's fine too. Or you can just critique it, you know, like conceptually, and say, oh well, it can never work with low-income groups, for example, you know, because they don't have any resources to do it, or something like that. Or it's too optimistic, you know, it's too whatever it is. I just want you to see if you can critique it, because there are actual critiques of this approach.
All right. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. Do your best. Okay, let's take a couple more minutes, yeah? Just finish up and then we'll go through some of them. Okay, so I think we'll just go through them and well, not all of them. We'll just run through some. There's some very interesting ones here. Okay, so Shirley wrote. Shirley, I'm going to share yours. Okay, is that all right? Hey, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. So Shirley said it can help the development of teenagers very well, but at the same time, it may be too restrictive, which may cause other problems. In Iceland, it may be effective. So yeah, you're talking about the context. Shirley, would you like to share on what you mean by it could be too restrictive?
I mean, if they have many, if the teenager be controlled in some ways, they need to go home between 10 o'clock, and maybe they will have some, they want to fight with their parents, they want to go out, or they maybe will have some road action or others, I think.
I understand what you're saying. Yes, it's true. That's definitely a possibility. You know, of course, in the video they show some of the very nice examples. The examples that, you know, of the families that worked very well and supported it. But it doesn't mean that all of the families are going to support that kind of an initiative, right? So, like, if we try that in Malaysia or in China or some other country, maybe it won't work so well if you don't have the parents really buying into it and investing in it, like those parents clearly were. And then, yeah, some young people may rebel against that kind of control, right? So, yeah, I think that's definitely true. Mahfouz said the approach did not integrate religion or culture. With these two are crucial in developing youth. Religion is the fundamental of creating values in humans. Culture is essential to nurturing human personality. So, yes, that's a good observation, Mahfouz. One of the things about some of the other frameworks that we didn't discuss, like if you look at the 40 assets framework, one of the assets there is religion and spirituality. And again, the idea is that these principles are meant to be broad, specifically broad, to allow for different cultures to interpret them as they wish, right? So that's why the 8 C's we can apply in Malaysia as well, because they're general principles, right? So that can be easily adapted to the culture, all right? And in fact, if you read the Malaysian Youth Policy, the 48 assets, there is an asset on spiritual development, there's an asset on religion or religious participation, I think, or something, okay? So again, it's the idea of a principle allowing flexibility in application in programs, okay? So yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. Thank you. The pressure put on by the surrounding parents and peers definitely do give some kind of positive impact. When the expectations are too high, this could give setback to youth in developing themselves. So that's interesting. When expectations are too high, yeah, that's more about implementation, I think, on how they implement the program objectives. All right. Kong, you spoke about the project research project, number of data samples. Are you referring to the research that they use to develop the youth development programs? Is that what you're referring to here? Is Kong there? I don't know. Okay, we'll come back to that one. Temporary motivation. After attending all those youth programs, they may go back to their normal habits, character, attitude, as youth sometimes can change rapidly and they're easily influenced. Yeah, that's true. Young people are unpredictable, right? That's why it's really important to build in things like strong relationships. That's one of the program quality characteristics, is that you want to, the things that keep young people engaged in programs are things that are of interest to them, when they have a say in what goes on in the programs, when they help to develop and plan the programs according to their interests, according to their needs, right? When they have good, strong relationships with the people in the programs, both the adults as well as their friends, their peers. Okay, so these are all ingredients to sort of keep young people engaged in those different programs. Okay, so again, those essential elements of positive developmental settings that we saw before, those are all sort of based on research that has looked at these kind of issues, like young people, easily influenced to do different things and so forth. All right. Okay, this one's still typing. As far as I'm concerned, no matter what country or different region, the development of youth is never done by an individual or a single organization or institution. You're absolutely right. In China, as far as I know, the development of youth is played by family, school, and government. Family plays a crucial role in the influence of youth. Yep, true. Like the Project Iceland, the government requires parents to restrain and cooperate. Ah, okay, interesting. All in all, three parties should work together. That's exactly what it means to create a system, right? They were referring to systems of youth development, right? So that's exactly what they're talking about. And again, this is very different according to different cultures. In China, it's very interesting that that you mentioned that. So family, school, and government work very closely together, and that has to do with the political system, right? It has to do with the culture, right? So it has to do with many different factors. But it's very interesting to hear that it's probably a much more systematic approach to that kind of thing. And yes, absolutely, without question, family plays a major role. Remember our presentation last week talking about the history, and again, that history that was presented is mostly based on the West. But that history, the whole youth sector and youth work and all that came about because of young people not really being influenced by things like the family and school. They were outside of those institutions, right? In some cases, they're causing problems for society, and this is where these things came about. This is how they came about, right? So yeah, so to have those strong systems are very important. This is interesting. National Youth Service. The modules lack focus, too much variety module cramped in. Thus, the objective of the NS is not achieved. Instead of NS, it becomes like a summer camp, compared to NS in Singapore, which focus on discipline and character building. Okay, interesting. So again, implementation is really important, right? Program implementation and how it's designed. All right. Support from parents and community development programs. Okay, so not always. We don't always get that support. Any program must have a strong base of support from families, teachers, and peers. The designated program must really cater to what the youth really needs. We have so many programs that are concerned with character leadership, but we lack a program that involves skills, okay? So yeah, so we saw one of the 8 aspects of program quality is there must be a skill development element to it, all right? So that's a good observation, all right? Oh, that's Haizum. I wonder why it repeated like that. I don't know how this thing works, but okay. All right, so these are good. Accessibility or outreach of the initiatives based on geographic location. Yes, that's a big issue in a lot of places. Transportation is a major issue in a lot of places. Okay, maybe not so much here, but in other countries. and then support system. Yeah, again, you're referring to, again, this sort of systematic approach, and it's absolutely true. That's why there's a saying even in the field that young people don't develop in programs. They develop in communities where there's family, where there's school, where there's peers. Okay, so again, it's a systemic idea of an approach. So programs might be lack of interest to the youth, and that's one of the reasons why one of the 8 elements of program quality is young people being involved, having a say, having a voice in the design of programs. Okay, youth-centered programming is a critical aspect of youth development programs. There must be youth-centered programming. Youth-adult partnership, youth voice, youth-centered programming, these are all different terms for giving young people meaningful roles to play in how those programs are designed. Okay, limited resources, absolutely. Lack of motivation, absolutely. Inadequate trustworthy, trust to youth power, absolutely. So the idea of developing programs for youth as opposed to developing programs with youth, okay, that's the difference. And it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. All right. All right, so I'm not gonna, there's a lot more. I'm just gonna observe, sort of look at these later, but I won't go through them in detail. I think a lot of these are actually the same, but they keep repeating. I don't know why. Oh yeah, they are the same. Okay. Anyone have any comments on any of the others that you read? So I just wanted to, that's good. I think you guys hit on some really important points here. And these are some, actually some of these are definitely those that are mentioned by scholars in the field and practitioners, people that practice, you know, that practice youth development. They pick up on many of these same issues. Okay, so no approach is perfect, obviously. And again, it really depends on the setting, the specific culture and the specific context of the setting, the youth involved, the type of community involved. All those things play a big role. And that's also why what we saw in terms of the models are, that's why they're designed the way they are. Okay, they're principle based. They're not necessarily like prescriptions, like a cookbook. You know, you want to develop your youth, follow these steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it can't be like that. It cannot be like that. It's not a cookbook. All right. All right. So this is the our first sort of introduction to positive youth development, and we will be really discussing a lot of this as the semester goes on from different perspectives and more in depth. Okay. But tonight was sort of the overview and the sort of general presentation. All right, so thank you to our presenters. What job well done. You can put up your little reaction there, clapping of hands. Okay, so anybody have anything else before we say au revoir, good night, have a good week? No, nothing else? Okay, if not, so we have our presenters for next week all figured out.
Next week is movie night, right?
Ah, next week is movie week. Thank you for reminding me. Let me see here. Okay, so next week is movie night. All right, so no reading next week. All right, so next week is fun. Of course, there's an assignment with the movie, but at least the movie itself is fun. All right. Yeah, it's a really good movie. I love showing this movie every semester to my class. Usually I mean, I won't spoil it. I won't spoil it for you. All right, so the movie's about 2 hours, so it's about the same as the class time. So we can watch it next week, okay? And then I'll describe or explain the assignment that goes with it. All right? So next week, just bring your popcorn and your gula gula, whatever you want to bring, munchies. All right. Okay? So see you all next week, inshallah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you,
All right.
Prof. Thank you, Prof.
Have a good week.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay, Prof. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
Bye-bye.
Bye.